Hello friends, it's David R. Becker here with Becker Art, and today we're painting a scene that is, actually I haven't been wanting to do this for a while, because I haven't taught you guys in a while about how to do an evening scene, and a scene that's like kind of a nocturne painting, but on white paper, not on black paper this time. I know a lot of times I teach you how to do the night scenes or the nocturnes with black paper, but today we're going to do it with white. And I've come to like the white paper because when I'm doing a dark, it's for me it's been easier than the black paper. The black paper is fun, and I like that everything is really really dark, and then you put color into the black, and it makes it a color black, right? And so this, what I want to do today, is on white paper, and so when I'm getting a dark, it makes you use a lot more paint, and so here we go. And so let me first. I didn't have time to buy something, a beer or a drink, so I mixed my own, and I just took a lemonade. I made my own lemonade with lemons, and I put some Malibu rum in it, and it tastes really good. So I'm actually gonna give it a 10 because I love this. I put it in my Yeti, and so it's gonna stay nice and cool the whole time, and a lot of ice in there, and it's just lemonade and Malibu rum, and it was very good. I already tested it because I was thirsty, but I give it a 10. It's a wonderful lemonade with Malibu rum. Hello, Maria and Mrs. Grey Cat. Enjoy your newsletter this week after a busy year. Yes, I have time to focus on David Robbie. Thank you. And so, if you didn't hear in my newsletter this week, I put in that next year I will not be doing any workshops, not traveling workshops. I will still do my weekly classes, but I'm giving myself a little sabbatical. I'm going to head and just start painting every day. I'm going to try to capture a style that's going to be my whole, I guess, my own kind of style, basically. And so I'll keep you definitely updated. And I will do these. These are still going to be happening. Still going to be teaching online. And I even maybe have that book come out that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it's going to be actually it may be a 2-month lesson on here. So keep up, look for that in the future. And so let's get going with my website. And so everything I do, just remember, it's going to be on my website. And I also will be changing this website in time in the new year and getting it a little bit more updated. And so you know what I'm doing every single day. I'm going to kind of make it so that it's like a daily thing on my website. All right, and so it's at beckerart.net, or my name, davidrbecker.com. Don't forget the R. And so today we're doing this scene right here. Right there. We're doing this scene. This is a scene that this is my photo I took of in Grand Marais, Minnesota. And I was thinking of maybe painting this outdoors and stuff and just putting a guy in there. That guy was put in by AI. I didn't, I did it afterwards, and this is now, from a photo. And but that's basically all these buildings there were a folk school where they do a lot of learning how to build things. And so this is a guy I put in there with a toolkit. And so like an old time toolkit, like folk art. All right, and so let's go to our supplies. And of course our supplies are Holbein paints, which I always use. And they're coming up with all kinds of different new colors too. They just sent me some colors that were called Nightfall. So a lot of night scenes, and I probably should have used them for this scene. And actually, are they here? Nope, I have them in my car. So I can't use them, which would have been a good time to use them here. Oh well, next time. And so my brushes, of course, and my paper, Stonehenge 300-pound paper. All right, let's go to our value pattern and talk about what we're going to be doing here. So what I want to do here is I want to, I know that I always make you make a no tan, which is black and white of the scene. And I like the pattern. It's not a bad pattern, right? It's you got the top light in the sky and the doorway, and it's lit up. But with a night scene, I want the light source not to be anything in the sky. I want everything to come from the light on the door. And so if you look right here, where's the light coming from? Right here, right? It's right there. The light source is coming in, blasting him in the face. And I noticed that since I put this in with AI, this guy, I don't think it did a very good job of it. And so if I want to draw him different, or if I want to put in shadowing, I will do that. And normally I would put him in from my imagination anyways. But for you guys, I wanted to put him in there. just because that way you don't have to draw them in out of your imagination, basically. And so, and also the sky to me will not be part of the light part. It will be, I guess, but I'm going to make it a lot darker than this. I want to make it so that the only light source I have is coming from here, and the light source of the sun going down, I want to make a little bit more like it went down even farther than it did, so that this part right here will be the blue. But as it goes up, I want to kind of turn it to a really, really dark, almost black. Like it's like the sun is down and it's just basically right here is going to be darker. So that I know my pattern is here, but to make this light look more vibrant and make it look brighter and in his face, then I would need to make this a little bit darker up here. So this white is going to still be a lighter part of my value pattern, but it will be only right here, not so much up here, but it will be a little bit lighter than my darkest dark. But maybe I'm even going to let this kind of go into the top of the scene back here. And that's only because, again, I want to make it so this part really, really stands out and really shines, like inviting you to this door. And I know it's going to be blue and orange are going to be the complementary colors, because at night scenes, usually that's the way it goes, because the lights are warm. And then this is a man-made light, you know, and this is the sun going down. And so that's going to have the blue cast on it because it's going to be almost down. So you have the black sky or the dark sky. So it'll be blue in the back and warm in the front. All right. I guess the train understood me. It just blew his horn. All right. And so let's go to our tabletop and get started here. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hey, Carol and Barbie. Hey, Mary, Beth, and Darcy. And Maria, I wonder how your Maria took a gouache course from the Squash. Hector, I think his name is. But from in Seattle, I think. And so I would love to hear how it went. And so let's get going here. And so basically, you still work light to dark, and I'm not doing black paper, which then, if I was working on black paper, I would go from dark to light. But because I'm working on white, we do it like normal watercolors do it. We start from the light and go to the dark. And so what that means is I'm going to put all the lights over all these dark parts and get my light right here. And like I said, in the sky, I'm still going to put the light down here, but not so much up here. So I'm just going to start right in the middle here and just get my light going. And I said this was going to be a gouache and watercolor because that's everything I'm doing all the time now, because I use my watercolor as gouache and when I'm using white with it. So it's not that I'm using gouache per se. It's like the stuff I buy, but I make my watercolor the gouache. And so I'm going to wet the area, only the area here that's going to be really light. And my lightest light is going to be right on the bottom, right below the door, or this log right here, because this is timber framing. He's going into a timber framing class. That's what they do in this folk school. They do timber framing, so that it's just really big blocks of logs that they make their buildings with. And so we'll go with the yellow, go with a bright yellow here. I'm just going to wet this area, and again, the lightest part is going to be right there, right on top of the door, and everything else is going to be darker than that. Why? Because that way it'll really shine as that being the lightest part of the whole painting. Excuse me, got to get another thing to drink. Cheers, everybody. All right, lemonade and Malibu rum. It's really good with crushed ice. And so let's go in here and get a little bit of the more of the, and if you want to tone down your orange or yellow, just use lavender. It'll make it kind of brownish. That's what I tend to use a lot of purple, you know, when I'm using orange and stuff, because it just tones it down well. Because violet and yellow, or blue, like a light blue, can go into the orange too. But with the yellow, if you put the blue in the yellow, then it actually gets a little bit more green, and that's what I kind of don't want to get. I don't want really green in here. All right, and so a little bit more orangey than yellow, especially away from the light that I'm going to put here, right over his face and stuff, because he's going to be, well, he'll be the same value as the light here. On the bottom of the door, I'm worried all about the door right there. The door is going to light, and back here in the distance that'll be a light also, but I'm going to make that kind of a little bit cooler. And let's go over his head. And there I'm putting a little pink in there at the bottom, and this would reflect into the water. There's water right here. This was in Grand Marais. This is right by the marina there. And if you've ever been to Grand Marais, you know there's a marina right by the folk school. If you ever want to do this, I know they have an open class and they have a competition class. So if you ever want to go in there and not be in the competition, but really just want to paint and still be in a competition, I mean, it's still a good competition. And because not many of you feel like, well, if you're going against people like me, then you don't want to do it. But they have an open class, and so you can just go there, and you still get awards, and and you can get awards. The judge is the same judge for the competition class as is for the open class. Now let's make that a little bit cooler. Do I want it cooler? Yeah, I do want it cooler. I think so. I'll make it a little bit more violet. And again, this is my lights, but since my darkest is going to be almost black, then I can make this a little bit darker because I do want this sky to be pretty dark. Hid Bay Island. Great workshop with Mike Hernandez. So I will be painting with Mike Hernandez in 2 weeks because I'm going to Laguna Beach, California to do the plein air event, and he's going to be one of the artists. So I met him once at Pace, but I didn't really talk to him very well. But I think I will probably talk to him a little bit more when I get to Laguna Beach because he's going to be one of the artists, one of the 30 artists there that is painting at the plein air event in Laguna Beach, which is an invitational, and he was invited and I was invited. So it'll be really got a lot of fun to get out there and paint and all right. And so this is right into my drink. Oh my gosh, right into my drink. All right, the big white goblin there. Cheers, everybody! Look at see the white, or is it? Well, now it's washed into the drink. Right into. I mean, it's amazing how you can have this huge cup. All right, so let's see what we're doing here. We're going to be doing the lights, and the sidewalk also is a little bit more. It's got some pink to it. It's like reddish. So I'm just going to go in here and just go right over that and just get right into the light of the sidewalk. And this all looks really kind of dark in a way, but wait until when I put the other colors in, then it starts looking okay. Because right now it seems like, whoa, that's kind of dark for that area, right? But it isn't. It'll shine up really nice and bright later. And as it goes back, it gets dark. And I kind of wait for that. I really don't want to put it in now. And even if I'm painting in my studio by myself and just doing this, I still think a lot of times I wait until I feel I can get it darker, but I'm not going to get it to the darkest dark yet. I think I'm just want to get the lights in there. That establishes a lot of things when you're going in with your lights first. So you establish, and when I go with my darks, it's going to have to be really dark, and so I really want to save that, and so that when I go in there, I have all these lights behind my darks so that it will definitely show through. And so I have my worms right here, and his toolbox will be red, like in the photo. All right. The darker I make this in the bottom, the more light will look brighter, and so I'm going to take this and make this a little bit darker down here. And then also around him I want to make it a little bit darker because I want him to stand out in front, and so let me just make that a little bit darker. I know the light is, when it hits the surface on the floor there, it'll be lighter than the door part because it's upwards it's shining towards the light, and so that would be a little bit lighter than the side of the door, and then this can just be really light. This part right here will be very dark, because that will be in the shadow part of this door, or this beam that's heading up. And I can put a little bit of color in there now too, so that it'll shine through. If I miss a spot, it'll shine through and make it look really nice. The top up here, you know, it's shining up. It's shining more down the light, and so it's not shining up because there's probably a cover on it. So that can be a little bit more dark. Plus, I can make it a little bit more color, like a little bit more reddish orange up there, which is actually showing. It's showing that right away up there. Now this hose, I can add a little bit of the coolness that I have in the background that I'm going to be putting in the background, so that I also have some of that blue down here too. So it's always good to have the colors combined somewhere else. Like, you know, we always say when you have a color somewhere, put it somewhere else in your painting. So then that blue will be down here too. Let's see. So the back of him is sure is going to be dark, and this is going to be the water back here. So why don't I just go right through all that? Why don't I just go right through all this with the blue? It's all going to be darker. And, oh, right over his face with blue. Okay, that was not a good thing. Oh, that's okay, because we can just take it right off right away. And so while I'm doing this, I might as well go right away into my darkest darks now, or my middle tones and my darks, my large middle tones, because that's all my lights. My lights are pretty much all done now. You know, that's my light area, because everything else is going to be very, very dark. You know, it's going to be, you know, even the sky, though the sky's going to be darker, like I said, than what you see in the photo, because I want to have a more dramatic effect on my painting. So this coming Sunday, I will be heading towards Dubuque, Minnesota. Dubuque, Iowa. And we will be there right away painting until Thursday. And I have to leave that place a day early from when they have the awards and stuff, because I got to fly, then drive back to Chicago, and then fly out to Laguna Beach, California. So it's going to be a very interesting logistical nightmare for me to figure this all out. I have to get 2 suitcases, one for next week and one for the week after, so that I will have enough clothes, and I also have enough art supplies, which I actually shipped out my art supplies. I have 2 different kinds of art supplies, one for Laguna Beach and one for Dubuque, which I'm driving to, and so then, but I'm not driving to Laguna Beach, so. All right, so now let's make this sky nice and dark. And so how do I make things dark? I go in with like Prussian blue, I go in with black and Prussian blue. And Prussian blue and black make a super, super nice dark. It makes it really, and I want it to be dark. Like I said, I want it to be dark up here. And to make something dark on white paper with transparent watercolor is very tough, because it's built to be transparent. So that's where you would possibly, and this would be a good thing to do, is to take your gouache then. You know, take out your gouache, because your gouache covers better because it's more finely ground, which I should have done, but I don't have my gouache out, my actual gouache that you buy gouache. So I'm using my transparent watercolor. So I've got to put a lot more pigment down to cover up this white paper. But it also shows you and teaches you how much paint you need to put down if you do using transparent watercolor only as a medium. Then it really teaches you a lot about how much pigment you got to put down to make it cover the white of the paper. That's what taught me how to make my watercolors darker, was by using gouache. And also, to make this dark, I would definitely need a lot of paint. And even though it dries 20% lighter, it's because it dries 20% lighter because there's white behind it. And that's why I always had used black paper. But for this, just go in with a lot of pigment and make it darker than you want it to, because it's going to dry lighter, and so it's going to shine through. It's going to be very, very, or like I said, use gouache, and then it'll be, and I still have to make it wet enough so that it softens itself. And that's the hard part. That's the part that gets really hard, because you're doing this really dark and you're doing it wet, which makes it more transparent. And so You really have to put a lot of pigment in, a real lot, and enough water so it still will be softening itself. Because you know me, and I think to soften your edges, you got to let them do it by themselves. Now this part in there is going to be really dark, and this part is going to be light, and so I'm going to go right here. I'm getting a little bit more blue now. I'm taking a little bit more, this is composed blue. And so I'm putting that in there. A little bit, it's a little bit almost like a gouache color too, because it has a little bit of white in it, which is not a great thing when you want to make something darker, is when it has white in it. So I'm letting the water soften the edge for me. I don't need to soften the edge because it's going to do it for me if it's wet enough. I just take my brush and then make sure it's not too wet, because if it's too wet, then it will not. It'll bleed out, and it won't give you. It'll make you little watermarks. But just enough, and then this will be the light part of the water. So see, I wanted to be, and I'm going to put a little turquoise in there. Put a little turquoise in there because I like that little turquoise look that you see in the evening. If you're in the city, a lot of times you see that in the city when there's like a lot of these yellow lights. There's a little bit of turquoise blue on the horizon. It's just basically wonderful because blue and orange are complements, so it really looks cool. And then I'm going to take this right down into this part. I might as well take it right into the sidewalk. And I noticed that I didn't use much purple in the sky, and sometimes you should have also a little bit of purple in that black and blue. So that'll make it just even also a little bit darker too. But right here I'm going to make it a little bit more purple. And then this stuff is really, really dark. And again, look at how much paint I'm using. And this is dry now, so it's going to be, it's going to give me a hard edge. But I still want to make it soft when it comes to the making soft edges. I still need enough water to make it a soft edge too. Like this is all black. This will be darker, and I'll put that in there later. But I'm going to make this dark from a dark blue to a reddish purple down here, and then go right into the sidewalk and try to get this shadow right here. And I know it looks really, really, really dark, but wait until it dries. You're going to be surprised how light this all gets. And then you'll be like, oh, I didn't get enough light, or I didn't get enough dark. But this is something you need to practice if you want to do night scenes on white paper. Just use a lot of pigment. And you have to put out new stuff if you're not using Holbein. If you don't use Holbein, and you have a hard clumps, you cannot get enough paint to make that dark and make that opaque enough unless you're using gouache. And gouache will cover up really well. And you can use gouache like watercolor because you can have it also soften itself up too, which is the neat thing, is that you can still do that too. So then this goes around, and this will be dark through here. And his legs will be light right here, so I'm just gonna. So see how I'm working wet in the wet still? This is my big middle tone. This is a big middle tone. And I'm not worried about my darks because the dark grass down here or the ground right here is going to be really dark. So I'm just getting the lights of the bottom or of the sidewalk. This is the light part still now. And it's got kind of a little pinkish glow to it. Pinkish orange glow to it, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm not putting in the bricks right now or anything like that. But doing night scenes is, and actually Carl Bresky said this once too, it's probably the easiest thing for beginners to paint because you're just kind of adding the light to, it's because it's very much black and white, right? And it's pretty much all that no tan we talk about. When you're doing a night scene, it's either dark or light, or pretty much, a little bit in between, but it's usually a little bit easier for to control the composition. Composition becomes very simple because that part is dark. Like I said, though, I made that part dark even though it is light in the picture. And you see why now? It's like how much more contrasty this starts looking lighter. And so it'll really give that illusion of light hitting his face and hitting this guy's thing. And I can even put the dark shadows in there later. So now we're going to go and take our little bit smaller brush, or 1 1/4, 1 1/2, I mean, or a ½ inch, ½ inch. How much time do we have here? I'm going too slow. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do our darks now, our middle tones, and going to go right into the big area, and that big area is all that dark right there. So I'm just going to take the same colors in black and a little bit of lavender or violet this time, a little dark blue, black, and I'm just going to go in here and do the parts where I feel the darkest darks are going to be, like underneath the roof tile right here. I'm going to leave a little bit of light showing through too. And this is a lot of pigment, but still very wet. My brush is still very wet. In black, I use peach black, and this is permanent violet. Permanent violet, and that's Prussian blue. Gives me a really dark bluish, cool black. It makes a very cool black. But when I get over here, I may want to go back into a warm black, a really warm dark color. So what I use, I'll use a little alizarin crimson in there. Then I'll put more alizarin crimson in this black part, and then look at how the picture shows you where the parts are a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. And so I do the lighter parts first, and then come back in with the darker around that. And I'm still always working wet in the wet, even though I'm getting hard edges. Inside there is all wet, and so that's still floating, and it's still making my pigment float and get granulation and all that fun stuff that you need to get still. So see how I can just go in there and just, that little spot right there shows a little bit, and actually, that should be light there. Okay, let's big that light again. So see how you can pull out the paint too? And then I'll take a little bit maybe of the orange, since that was what it was before I covered it up. Kind of reddish orange, so I'm going to take a little bit of vibrant, brilliant orange, it's called. And later on, if I misplaced that and I decided I totally made a mistake and I made it too dark, I can go back with gouache and just go right over the top of it and bring it back to light. A little sign right here. There's a little board that goes right here, and this is the background. That should be the blue dark back here. And this is a building back here behind this, and so that's just dark. And I probably should get a little bit of that. See how there's a building in between there, so that's just really dark. But I do want to get some of that blue, some of the blue I put in the background sky. Put that in there too. What the heck? It can reflect off the buildings if there is a building back there. AI may have made something back there that wasn't actually there. That's the bad thing about AI, is when you use it, sometimes it screws up your whole picture because it's not what's really there. All right, a little bit of blue shining back there. Now we got, go around, let's just keep on going here before I get a hard edge right there. Let's just keep on going. Why am I working a small brush? That's too big an area for a small brush. Better late than never. Hey Liz. Hey Karen. Oops, I'm a little late. I have to watch the beginning after. No problem, it's always there. It'll always be there. So see how nice and the big brush covers more, and it's all nice and wet. And it's also nice and wet so that I can put a lot of pigment in there so it still floats. It'll give me some nice wash, a nice dark wash and if you use any kind of granulated pigment, that'll look good too in that. And so that's really dark. And then I'm going to go around this hose right here in this little spigot. Now that it's wet, also I find that nice thing is when you're using a brush like this big, and how wet this is, if I feel that there should be a little bit more warmth right here, look at it, I'm just drop some warm in there. Orange and red, I'm just going to drop it right into the water. and just let it float in there, because that'll show a little bit of the reflection of this into the dark, that's warm close to there. And that's how you put a light on top of a dark. It's got to be wet in the wet. It has to be wet, and it has to float your watercolor. And like I said, this is when you're making it really thick. That's when you use gouache. When you need to cover up, like, and do more like an oil painter style, where you're putting it on really, really, really thick. But this is enough to make it look, like a watercolor, or use a watercolor technique. But then later on, I use the gouache when I need to make something light again, or dark when it's too dark, or I try to rub it out. That's another thing I do. And then my new style I'm working at is going to be that what I was just talking about, is like basically using watercolor and gouache together, but in such a way where you won't be able to tell which one it is. I just want to have, I like oils, I like watercolors, I like, gouache look like oils and gouache look like watercolors. So I figure, why not do it both? Do everything. It doesn't matter. Here's this hose, and it's lit up from the side a little bit. Look at how beautiful that wash is. It's just floating pigment. That's the greatest thing about doing a big wet wash like this. And that's how come it's easier for students. Actually, I think, I made everybody use black paper for these night scenes, but I think it's very good for you to start using some white paper too, because it'll show you how much paint to use to keep it dark, and because it takes a lot of paint to make it dark. And so that way you'll really start using enough paint when you're getting your certain colors and your certain kind of washes and your darkness to it. That's, I think, our biggest problem with watercolors, is that we never make things dark enough, because it always lightens up, right? And especially transparent watercolor, it just lightens up because it's the amount of pigment you use in your wash, and it always dries lighter, right? It always dries lighter because we're not using enough pigment to put down in the wash, and then when it dries, whatever is left of the pigment, that's what's covering. And it's transparent pigment, so that there's no filler in there that's like opaque. Like gouache has a certain filler in it that makes it opaque, and it's also ground finer. So here now we're just doing the ground here, and we'll just make it kind of greenish. And this is was dry, so I can make that hard edge right there. But do I want it that hard? That's another thing. A lot of times we put too many hard edges in our stuff too. And so I'm trying to teach a lot of students that, like, when you don't see something, you don't want to know what something is, blur it. And what does that mean, blur it? It means make it a soft edge. Make it so that there is no edge, and then it just becomes a soft edge. Like, let's say I wanted to soften that up. I would just take water, and let's say we don't want to see where this ends, and we just want to have it all kind of blend together. That was a little damp, so that's going to give me a watermark. So normally do this when it's dry. You see, I'm going into a damp area, so we're going to get a little bit of watermark here. But I just want to show you that you don't always have to have the hard edge all the way across. It can go into a blurry area. Photographers use that all the time when they blur something, right? Well, we as watercolors and painters can do the same thing. We can make things blurry by softening the edges. Now I have to wait for that to dry, because now I'm going to ruin everything. That was the first wash type of thing. And I'm going to make this a little bit darker, maybe also a little bit more warm, while it's still wet and floaty. And do I need texture there? We all know how to get texture all different ways, by taking your brush like this. The texture, salt, scrubbing, using the paint that has granules in it. There's many different ways of getting techniques. I can spatter it later. So there's my big dark, right? There's my big darks, and I still haven't gotten dark enough over here with some of the darks, but I've got this pretty much right. I'm now gotta get that too. But first I'm gonna get the windows in there, and because it's a little bit lighter. So the window has a reflection of probably this blue. So I'm gonna definitely put that blue in there for the window reflection. The doors are basically done because they're light to dark, and so I already got them done because they were part of my light scene. And then it looks like it's pretty warm on top here. Like this is light, and it goes down to a dark. And that's the window in the door. Let's do the same thing on the next window. If you were posting into a watercolor contest, can you also have used gouache? I think you're saying, can you put gouache into watercolor competitions? It depends on which competition. You can't do it for TWSA because that's a Transparent Watercolor Society. You can't do that at all. But for AWS and NWS, you can. I've actually, the last one I put in, I had gouache in it. And so AWS doesn't mind, NWS doesn't mind. It's basically just look for the Transparent Watercolor Society, and there's another, I think there's a couple other ones that don't allow gouache, but just read the prospectus. Make sure you read the prospectus really good so that you know exactly if it's okay to use gouache or not. And also on what kind of paper, because there's a lot of times they will not let you use certain kind of papers. So always read the prospectus. Now we're going to get this a little bit darker in here, the bottom part. And looks like we got some lines in here to show the door. Alright, let's get around this guy himself. We're going to go in here, and now this is pretty much detail stage now. And what is detail stage? It's after you get all your large mediums and darks, your large ones, now we're getting our detailed lights and darks. Both of them, either one, lights or the darks. And so I'm going to use my smaller brush now to get the look of his face, his shoulder. And then the back of him is darker than the background, so we're going to do that dark, the same dark I just used on there. I'm going to juxtaposition it right to the front. And again, I'm using, for my darks, I'm using Prussian blue, black, peach black, a little bit of lavender, I mean not lavender, purple, violet, permanent violet. You can get this soft edge by adding water. Soften your edges by using water. It's that simple when you're using watercolor. Not that difficult. So you just take one side of my brush and put a little bit of water right along there, and it'll soften it right up. And this is where, if you're doing a person like this, make sure your drawing is on, that it looks really good. For flesh tone, I use pink, a little bit of pink and orange. Or you can make a red with white and a little bit of orange. And I'm going to make it all one value at first, and then I will pull things out and push things back in. So see, what I'll do is I'll take my brush and I'm going to absorb the light side of his arm. And that way I have a little light part on that side of the, and this same thing with his face. I use the same colors. And orange jaune number 2 is always a good color, but pink and a little light orange works really well for flesh tone. Then we go with the red toolbox. And a toolbox, like anything else, is lighter, closer to the light, and as it goes away from the light, it gets darker. There's also probably a shadow right beside this guy's arm. But I just do one value at first. I usually just wet it and do one value, and then I come back in with the dark value. Either if I want a hard edge, then I have to wait till it dries, or while it's soft, while it's wet, I can make a soft edge. Or let it float in together with another color. Like if I want to put another orange there, make it even brighter, I could maybe maybe I can put a really bright orange in it and damp it right here to make it look like it's a little bit brighter, reddish orange, and as it goes away, you can make it darker and get to like alizarin for the back part of here. And inside the toolbox, I was going to just put a bunch of little like things that look like tools hanging out, little lines of dark. Did you say pink and orange for flesh tones? Yeah, yep, pink and orange. Yeah, when entering a contest, definitely, it's always, you can use gouache sometimes. For certain ones, AWS you definitely can. I know that for fact because the last two when I sent them that got in had gouache in them. But you have to do it totally different if you're going to be doing for the TWSA, because that is Transparent Watercolor Society. So there, don't use any gouache. No white, no gouache, no overlaying a light on top of a dark. It has to be only transparent colors. You can use opaque colors like pink and stuff, but they have to be done wet into wet, and they have to be floating, and so that you can still kind of see through them. So it's the way you use gouache. You can use gouache to make it look transparent. It's just the way that you put them down is very important. Now, there's a little light inside this little this little thing that I did last year, actually. There's a little light in there, so I'm going to put a little light, just really light. And this is on a pier, and there's a sailboat that's out. It's not there right now, so I'm not going to put it in. And then there's a tree in this little thing, which is just really dark green. But anything that's pointing towards the light here, I'm going to make these branches a little bit orange, because they would pick up a little bit of that light coming to that part, and then make the rest really dark. Dark green. I'm just taking quinacridone gold, a little bit of blue, make it really dark green, and then just make it almost opaque. You can make this part because you want it really dark and hard edged. Let that glow. Let it glow where the light's coming from. I'm getting a cramp in my leg. Hold on. I better have another cheers, guys. Cheers. And it looks like there's another over here. It wouldn't hit as much the light, but and this is actually a tree with little leaves on it, so I'm gonna make it a little bit different than that one. There's also a building right here, which I'll just make really dark. It's just actually I think it's this. There's a hut out there with a grass rooftop, but I'm just gonna make it like the side of a building. Make it come in a little bit farther than you want it to, because otherwise it'd be covered up by the frame a little bit here. And then I can bring it right into this. There's also a bush right inside this planter. I'm just making that really dark. And if you want to make your blacks, then at least they've got to really be really dark. So a lot of people use alizarin crimson, some phthalo blue, like phthalo green, to make their blacks. I just use black. I just buy the black, and then I make color into it to make it dark. Now this planter is very dark also. And I like using black only because that way I know for sure it's going to be really dark. And like right here, this planter, if I want to make things really dark, I just use the black. And then if I want to make them colorful, I go back in while it's wet, because you can float color into it. And it'll still keep it pretty, it'll still make it pretty dark because you already have the black down there. So see how I just made that warm? And when this dries, it will be kind of a matte finish. And so until you put wax on it or put a piece of glass on it, it looks not black because it gets matte. And so that's a good reason why it's good to varnish it afterwards or spray it. Now, back way in the distance, there is some lines back there from a wall and stuff. I'm deciding not to put them in because I want that to be just like, so you can't, I don't want any hard edges or any lines back there. I just want it to be like you're looking into the distance. And maybe it could be even, hazy like it was when we were up there. It was very, very, couple of days we had a lot of fog. So let's go in here now. Again, the trees that are towards the light will be warmer. So make those plants and whatever they are, make them warmer, closer to the light. And then inside this planter box, I'm just going to make all kinds of little darks and like leaves and plants type of thing. You can even put flowers in there, but I'm not going to get too crazy with any other stuff over here. There's a shadow underneath here too. And this is the center of interest right there, so go ahead and make it detailed. And as this goes back there, I'm going to take a little bit of the orange to make it a little bit darker, this planter box, because it's not as close, and it's not going to have as much light on it. Be a little bit darker. And when you want to soften an edge there, that's fine too, because you can let things again be very blurry. You don't have to identify everything. Like this could be a little shadow across the edge of the bow or of the top of the wall of this planter. It could be like a little bit of this planter box right here is darker as it goes away. So I'm just going to make it a little bit darker right here and let it go to the light. And how do you make a gradation? You wet it and just, put less pigment right here and then just bleed it into a darker area. And later on I will go underneath here and make this really dark. Let's get his blue jeans on. So I'm going to take the blue. So again, start with the lightest color of the blue jeans first, and that would be right here. So I'll get that in there first. I always like the dark on white paper. So I'll get that blue in there. It's nice and light. And then the rest of his pants are really, really dark. Right? They're almost there. Because again, if it's away from the light, it's going to be really, really dark. So I use black, and over on the top here by his toolbox, I'm going to make a really dark red dark. And over here, same thing, red dark. I don't want it to be colorful dark. I want it to be colorful dark, but with the color that it's on. Like this is a red toolbox, so it's going to be a red dark. The shadow will be dark red. And there is reflected light on this thing, because again, AI does whatever it wants, but I know that if it's away from the light, that part will be dark. And I'm going to take that dark right into his blue pants, and so I'm going to take Prussian blue, black, and bring that right down the back of, right down by his butt, right over underneath the toolbox, right down the pants, and bring this all together. And then form by taking out a little bit of color here and there, because the front of his leg would definitely be lighter. That would be a dark, but it'd be lighter than the back of his leg. Because again, it's pointing towards the light. Always know where your light is coming from. Even in the daytime, when the sun is out, always remember where the light's coming from and where the shadow would go from that point. What time is it? Oh, we still got plenty of time. It's fun doing these really night scenes. I love them because it's pretty simple when it comes to what has to be darkest, and what has to be light. So it's very, very much separated, because when there's no light on something, it gets really dark. Because this light is hitting him, and so it's very powerful. He's very strong light right on his face, and so anything that's not I'm showing the light will be pretty dark. Like the back of his head here, and his hair will be very dark because it's away from the light. And then the back of underneath his leg right here, it gets really dark. The shoe is really dark, because again, that's the back of his shoe. The front of his shoe should be a little bit lighter. And then because he's walking on this reddish kind of tile, the shadows will be going from here. I'm just going to put the shadow and everything together. And it's not on the photo again because AI did not do this. But I know that would be a lot darker shadow. I'm smarter than the AI, because I would put a shadow from here, and he's going to be back a little bit here. It's going to kind of go back there. So I'm going to get a little bit more of a shadow than is on the picture. Again, this was the guy was put in with AI, with Photoshop AI, and it just sometimes it doesn't give you exactly what you really want, and showing it right there that it's not greatest, but it's nice when you can put some people in it. And I thought this would be kind of nice to put a person in there. Otherwise, it's just a doorway. This is more of a story. I like telling stories in my paintings, and I thought you guys could maybe like to do that too. Just put a little bit of a. If you don't want to put them in and you feel it's too hard, then that's fine too. All right, let's see. Gotta get this dark behind here. Again, any questions, guys, please let me know. Let's make this a little bit warmer right here. This underneath here is a little bit darker. Let's make this a little bit darker too, just because I want to make him pop out. And this is going to be really dark right underneath there. Underneath the planter box here, it's going to be really dark. And if I find it's not the right color, you know, while it's wet, just put it on there. Here, I'm going to put some green in there. Make this a little bit greener. And also, since this is also not shadowed very well, I'm going to make this shadow a little bit longer and bring it into the street here a little bit. And since again that street is a little bit warmer over here, put a little warmth in that, not that red. Anytime I can bring things together, that's the better thing to do, is make things come together as one big wash. And so I'm just putting that in there as a big wash. I'll bring it right into them, and then I'm going to take my big brush and I kind of wet all this so that it just is, it feels more together. The wash, like it was one big wash, and it'll still have that look of it going around the side there. But I'm going to bring it right into the shadow of him. And that's pretty much an ugly color over there, so let's make that a cool color. Let's make that, because behind the light, the shadow a lot of times is when a warm shadow hits, and then it would be a little bit cooler. The shadow would be cooler behind him. So we'll keep on doing these. I know I'm not going to be doing workshops, but I will still be always doing these. So always stay tuned. You know, make sure you have your subscription. Hit the like and also subscribe if you're not subscribed, because they'll let you know when I'm doing. They'll notify you if you have your notifications on when I'm doing these paint-alongs or my demos. And I'll probably be actually doing more of these, since I will not be doing the other things, the workshops. And I have to do a couple more videos for Holbein, because Holbein will be sold in Michael's. Michael's is becoming an art shop, an art store, more than a craft. They've been selling really good products lately, and so they're just starting to be a little bit more like a real art store, where Hobby Lobby is getting more away from it and doing more crafts. But and so you're going to be seeing Holbein paints at Hobby Lobby, and I mean at Michael's. And this is a little bit too much here, so I'm going to hold this down a little bit. So now I'm getting into really details, a lot of details, getting as detailed as I can. And we're getting pretty close. Here, gets really dark right here. And so now I'm getting into details where I look at the picture and I find every little thing that can possibly make it look realistic. Like what kind of wood is this? Is there grain in the wood? You know, how detailed do you want to get? Is that a little bit darker? Is it a little bit lighter? And now you can also use your brush and stuff and make texture. And so the one thing I got to make look really good is this line right here. So this line, which has to be really dark, but I'm gonna make it warm. I'm gonna use a lot of pigment so I can make it with one wash. Black and alizarin. I'm gonna try to make this a really nice straight line. One of the biggest things you're going to find if you're doing this painting is that you need to use more pigment. Don't be afraid to make it almost look like an oil. Don't be afraid to use a lot of thick, almost like it's a gouache even, like where you're using it really thick, but then make sure you use enough water so that it's floating still. So that's the secret, is make sure it's floating, but use a lot of pigment. Lots of pigment. No, it's I think more or less because of Joanne closing. Somebody asked, Carol asked, is it because of Michael's, because of Cheap Joe closing? And it could have been that too, but I think they're talking to a lot of art people or art companies that are selling like paints and stuff, and because you're going to see like Winsor Newton in there, which they already had a lot of other clientele in there already, but they're now getting a lot more, and they're also doing materials so that, because Joann's closed and they're trying to pick up all the people from Joanne, so they also have tables where they're cutting material now and stuff. And so I just went into one this last weekend, and I saw they have tables for cutting, but they do have a lot of art supplies, so you're going to be seeing a lot of art supplies at Michael's. So now this whole area here, I'm just trying to make the light stronger, you know, because I got it kind of too light right here. So I'm going to make this a little bit darker, a little bit dark and orange. I'm just going to re-wet these areas and just take them up, make them a little bit darker. Nice thing is, you guys make something darker, and you can also make something lighter if you use gouache. So you're never going to have to worry anymore about doing your watercolors and not doing it right, because there's always ways of making it darker or lighter. People get so upset about it, or they think, you know, oh, I can't do watercolors, you can never change anything. I'm changing it right now. You know, I can make this a little bit darker if I feel it needs to be a little bit darker. And if I want it lighter, I'll try to rub it out, or I will put back in gouache and make it a little bit lighter that way. First, I try to do the transparent way. I think that's the best way at first. Now these are little walk steps, and so I'm going to put them in there. These are like bricks. And then this I'm going to just make is like, I'm going to fake some bricks in there. I'm not going to do the herringbone that they have in there. It's a little bit too much for me. Look at this. Now we're going to do these door frames here a little bit different. So I'm giving it a little bit more darks and a little bit more details, so it doesn't look so, you know, perfect. It doesn't need to be really, really hard edged in spots. And now I'm going to go in and do some gouache look. Because I don't mind the look of gouache, like when you use it thick after you get done, when you get to a certain point, because I feel then it gives it the look that oil painters have that watercolors don't have. The nice thing about watercolors is that you can make it look very smooth and get those beautiful washes, but they can also now, I like to do where I'm getting brush work, like brush strokes in there. Like oil painters have that. That's one thing they have that we don't have, is a brush stroke. Like a thick brush stroke where you're taking it and you just kind of, like this type of thing, where you can actually see the brush stroke. So that's just, and this doesn't look dark enough here, so I have to put it like up because it's shining a little bit. This is just the hose laying on the ground. And so the final thing I'll do, which is 1 minute left, is I will, oh, this door I gotta do a little bit different. What I'll do is I'll take my small brush, my rigger brush, and I will actually put in some of the lights with white where I feel that I want a sparkle, or how about stars in the sky even. You know, but I can go in there anywhere I feel that it needs a little bit of like a hit. This is actually a sign right here. Why is it dark? Well, this should have been. I'm going to put in little lines to show, like in front of him, the front of him, and also his toolbox. I'm just going to give it a little hit of light. Side of his arm or his hand too. And again, this is something that I like to do because I like the look of brushwork. And why not? You know, it's not illegal to do this unless you're going to enter it into TWSA. Then you can't do this. But I like this look, and I like to take it farther where I can, you know, make him look like both the watercolor and a gouache. Maybe on the side of this, gonna have a little bit. It basically makes things look like when something's shiny, you can make it just a little bit shinier by putting the white in there. You can do this also with masking fluid before you start, and if you know where all your lights are going to be, just put masking fluid there, and you know, that'll be just the same thing. It'll look really brighter because you'll get the white paper, so that's not a bad thing. All right, so I think that's about it, guys. And this is still wet, and so once this dries, that'll be matte. And I may go in there and just cut out a little bit more of this sidewalk that's up back there. I can just take it, and let's see if we can do it now. We'll take a little bit of this paint out off of there. So I'm just going to absorb it in my brush, and then when it dries, and it's drying right now, it's shiny, so you can see it's still dark. And what I'll do is I'll go in there and I'll get in there with a couple of these bricks, you know, the bricks that I did like this. I'll put a couple in there while it's still dry. All right. Hope you learned a little bit of something about doing a nocturne, something a little bit darker than we normally do. But this is a good way of learning how to use enough paint to make something really dark. And this can be helpful also when you're doing your daytime scenes and you're getting to a certain part where you need it dark. Because even in daytime scenes, sometimes you have to get that dark, you know, with almost black. And so don't be afraid of using a lot of pigment. All right. So and actually Sunday I will not be able to do anything because Sunday I'm driving to Dubuque. So I will not have a Sunday morning thing because I got to get there early. So I will see you probably in a couple weeks because next week I'll be doing that. So we're not going to have a paint along. And then the following week I'll be in Laguna Beach. So it may be a little bit before we get back together and do these paint alongs. All right. So just keep on looking on my website or in my newsletter, and you'll find out when we're doing it next. But once I get back in middle of October, I have nothing else planned for the rest of the year. And so we'll be doing a lot of these ever after that. All right. We'll see you later, guys. Take care. See you soon.